Taylor Swift had everyone smiling at her wedding until she started talking about Travis Kelce and the NFL. What began as a heartfelt speech quickly took an unexpected turn, leaving guests shocked and sparking a wave of reactions almost instantly. Here's what happened. Madison Square Garden holds 20,000 people on a basketball night. On the night Taylor Swift married Travis Kelce, it held about 1,000, and every single one of them had signed a non-disclosure agreement to be there. The blowout at MSG had 1,100 guests. One source told NBC News. Security was tight. Phones were supposedly locked away, and still within 48 hours, the room's best-kept secret leaked out anyway. Not about the dress, not about the flowers, but about a moment involving Kelce's job. Here's the setup. Everyone from Ed Sheeran to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell was spotted at the wedding, as were several Kansas City Chiefs players. So when the speeches started, the room wasn't just family and childhood friends. It was stacked with the exact people who make up professional football, the league's own commissioner, active players, retired legends. That's the crowd sitting there when the subject of Travis Kelce's profession came up on the microphone. It didn't come from Taylor first. It came from her closest friend, Lena Dunham, who took the mic to toast the couple. While delivering her speech, Swift's longtime friend joked that Kelce's sport of choice was just straight guys reenacting gay porn, a source told the Daily Mail. In a room full of NFL players and the commissioner himself, that line landed like a grenade. The insider said the remark split guests as gasps and laughs were heard in the crowd. Now here's the part that actually shocked people. Taylor didn't flinch. She didn't wave it off, didn't look embarrassed, didn't do the thing brides are supposed to do. When a joke about their new husband's entire career gets a mixed reaction from 300 pounds of offensive linemen. Swift reportedly appreciated the joke, labeling her close friend a genius after the speech. Not brave, not iconic, genius, in front of Goodell, in front of the Chiefs locker room, in front of Kelce's own brother. Think about who was sitting in that crowd when it happened. This wasn't a comedy club. This wasn't a bachelorette party. Several Kansas City Chiefs players were there, meaning Kelce's actual teammates, guys he suits up with every Sunday. We're hearing a joke about their sport land inches, from where the tight end himself was sitting at his own wedding, next to the woman who just endorsed it out loud. And it wasn't the only line of the night that touched on football. The wedding doubled as a reunion of football royalty and rock royalty in the same tent. Guests spotted arriving included NFL star Cooper Kupp, alongside actors and musicians who had nothing to do with the sport at all. That collision, Hollywood next to helmets, is exactly what made a joke about football land the way it did. It wasn't preaching to the choir. It was a room split right down the middle between people who live and breathe the NFL and people who'd never watched a snap in their life. Even the people watching from outside picked up on how strange the mix was. One of Kelce's own former teammates wasn't even inside the building, and he let everyone know about it. Former NFL quarterback Chase Daniel posted, "Can't believe my invite to Taylor and Travis's wedding never came. Feels like throwing Travis Kelce his first NFL TD should have at least earned me a seat at the kids' table," punctuating the message with a laughing emoji. That's a man who handed Kelce the ball on the single biggest moment of his rookie career, watching the wedding play out on social media from the outside, joking about being snubbed while, somewhere inside, a joke about football itself was already dividing the room he wasn't allowed into. So by the time guests started leaking details to reporters over the following 2 days, the story wasn't really about the dress or the cake. It was about what got said about Kelce's sport on his wedding night with his own commissioner in the building, and about the bride's one-word verdict on it afterward. That's the moment everyone woke up talking about. And to understand why it landed the way it did, you have to go back to how this entire romance started. In the first place, because it began with Kelce getting rejected in public over football. Before any of this, before the vows, before the joke, before the commissioner sat 2 tables away from a punchline about his own league, there was a much smaller, much more awkward story. It started with a friendship bracelet that never got handed over. The Kansas City Chiefs tight end admitted on a July 2023 episode of New Heights, the podcast he co-hosts with his brother, retired NFL player Jason Kelce, that he had tried to meet Swift after one of her shows in the area. He'd made her a bracelet. He wanted to hand it over himself. It didn't happen. "I was a little butthurt. I didn't get to hand her one of the friendship bracelets I made for her," Kelce said. "I wanted to give Taylor Swift one with my number on it." That single sentence, said out loud on a football podcast, is the reason any of this exists. He complained about getting stood up by a global pop star on a show his brother co-hosts, and it worked. Swift later told Time she thought that call-out was metal as hell. Within a few months, she was in the stands at his games. That's the part worth sitting with. This entire relationship was built on football being the thing that introduced them, and football being the thing broadcast to millions every time she showed up in a suite. She was attending his games. Most famously, the 2024 Super Bowl his team went on to win. Every camera cut to her reaction became a moment. Every game became a referendum on whether she'd show up. The NFL leaned into it. Broadcasts leaned into it. It became, for 2 full seasons, impossible to separate Travis Kelce, the tight end, from Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift's boyfriend. So when he proposed, it wasn't exactly a surprise to anyone who'd been watching. The engagement came in August of last year, announced with a joint post that leaned into exactly the joke everyone had already been making about them for 2 years. The duo announced their engagement in a joint Instagram post captioned, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." That caption did a lot of work. It was Taylor poking fun at the exact dynamic. The public had assigned them, the artist and the athlete, the stadium tour and the football stadium, occupying the same cultural space for 2 straight years. And even before the wedding, Taylor had been openly needling that dynamic in interviews. She wasn't shy about how unexpected the whole thing felt to her. She described how she couldn't have imagined the way her relationship began with Kelce, saying, "If you ever would have told me that the most meaningful relationship I would ever have would start with a man saying that he was butthurt, that I didn't want to meet him." Like, unbelievable. That's Taylor, in her own words, treating the entire origin story. Bracelet, rejection, podcast complaint, and all as something worth laughing about, rather than something to be precious over. That pattern matters. Long before Lena Dunham ever grabbed a microphone at the reception, Taylor had already established a habit of talking about Kelce's world, football, the locker room culture, the podcast broness of it all, with a wink rather than reverence. She wasn't the type to get defensive about the sport. If anything, she'd spent 2 years treating the collision between her fan base and his as one of the funnier parts of the whole story. That's also, by the way, why the wedding itself became such a magnet for football people in the first place. This wasn't a private ceremony that happened to have one football player show up. It was structurally a meeting point between 2 entire industries. Sports figures at the wedding included New England Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel and sportscaster Aaron Andrews. Broadcasters, coaches, executives, the actual infrastructure of the NFL, sat in the same room as pop stars and film directors, because that's what 3 years of Taylor Swift showing up in a suite had built. So when the speeches started and someone made a joke about the sport that brought Travis and Taylor together, it wasn't landing in a vacuum. It was landing in a room that the NFL itself had partly built, full of people whose entire professional lives revolved around the exact thing being joked about. And Taylor, who had spent 2 years openly poking fun at the culture clash between her world and his, was never going to be the one in that room defending football's honor. She was always going to be the one laughing loudest, and that's exactly what guests said happened. If the joke was the loud part of the night, the vows were the part guests couldn't stop talking about, for a different reason entirely. And this is where things get more complicated, because what Taylor said to Travis directly, not about football, but about him, turned out to carry its own kind of shock. Start with the format. This wasn't a quick I do and a kiss. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce read 20-minute vows to each other from gold books during their starry wedding, with the pop icon singing part of hers, while the football star proved more emotional than his wife. According to 2 guests, 20 minutes each. That's 40 minutes of 2 people talking directly about their relationship, in front of a room stacked with A-listers, teammates, and a league commissioner. The same room that had already heard a joke about football minutes earlier. Swift and Kelce personally wrote their own vows. 2 guests said, with Swift's vows featuring a bit of her singing and the exchange between the couple, eliciting tears from those in the crowd. That detail, Taylor singing in the middle of her vows to her football-playing husband, is its own kind of statement. She didn't just recite a promise. She turned part of the ceremony itself into a performance, blending the 2 things people already associated her with, her music and her relationship with an NFL player. And the reaction inside the room reportedly cut against the stereotype everyone expects at a wedding. You would think the bride would be the one crying more, but it was actually Travis that was more emotional. One of the attendees said, "A 3-time Super Bowl champion, a man built for contact." and pressure in front of 70,000 fans, came undone reading vows to his wife in front of a much smaller crowd. That detail spread fast, probably because it flips the script people expect from a tough, physical athlete. Outside voices who attended backed up how personal the ceremony felt despite the size of the crowd. George Stephanopoulos, who was there with his Good Morning America co-hosts, gave one of the first public accounts. The ceremony was great, moving, Adam Sandler, funny and touching. Vows, everything you would hope for, real, vulnerable, serious and silly, deeply loving. Stephanopoulos told ABC News after the wedding. His colleague backed that up with her own detail about the format. Roberts and Stephanopoulos said the couple wrote their own vows in little books. That word silly is worth pausing on because it suggests the vows weren't purely sentimental. There was humor braided into them too. The same instinct that led Taylor to call her best friend's football joke a stroke of genius, rather than something to smooth over. Guests describing serious and silly vows, paired with a bride who sang mid-ceremony and a groom who cried harder than she did, so much as writing their own rulebook for what a wedding between a pop star and a tight end should look like. Stephanopoulos put it plainly when describing just how unusual the intimacy felt given the size of the event. It's hard to imagine that a place that big and a wedding with such stars could feel so personal and so intimate. Stephanopoulos said, Robin Roberts added her own read on why that was possible. Because they had their neighbors, their high school friends. It was like any wedding that you would attend. Roberts added, that contrast, 20,000 empty seats around them. But a ceremony that reportedly felt like a backyard wedding is part of why guests kept talking. It wasn't just what got said, it was where it got said. And who was in the room to hear it. A football commissioner and a stadium's worth of NFL history, listening to a global pop star sing part of her wedding vows to the tight end. She met because of a rejected friendship bracelet. By the time the ceremony wrapped, two separate moments had already defined the night in guests' minds. The vows that turned Travis into the one crying, and the football joke that Taylor didn't just tolerate but celebrated. Both were about to collide with a reception that brought even more football and music worlds crashing into the same tent. And that's where the reactions really started pouring in. Once the ceremony ended, the reception turned into its own event entirely. And this is where the reactions from guests, football people and entertainers alike, started shaping the story that would spread for days afterward. Start with the entertainment itself, because even the choice of performers blurred the line between Taylor's world and Travis's. The reception featured performances from Paul McCartney and Stevie Nicks. Two guests said, in addition to a raffle that featured the same kind of car Swift and Kelce took on their first date. A raffle built around their first date at a wedding that had already turned football into a punchline and a plot point. That's the kind of detail that made guests feel like they were watching something built specifically to merge these two worlds rather than just host them in the same building. Then there were the reactions that came directly from people connected to football. Rich Eisen, a sportscaster who spent decades covering the NFL, was in the room and came away impressed. Sportscaster Rich Eisen, who attended with his wife and fellow sportscaster Susie Schuster, had high praise for the wedding as well. That's someone whose entire career is built around football, giving his verdict on a night where football itself had been the punchline of the evening's most talked about joke. Director Joseph Kahn, who wasn't there for football at all, gave his own read on how the night balanced comedy against emotion. What I will say about the wedding was, it was so much funnier and emotional than expected. And as big as it also felt very intimate. Khan wrote in an Instagram post, funnier than expected. That's a guest, independent of the football conversation entirely, confirming that comedy, not just sentiment, defined the night. Country star Kelce Ballerini added her own emotional account from the crowd. In a July 4 post on X, she described the event as the most beautiful wedding, adding that she is still crying and dancing. That's a third independent voice, landing on the same split reaction everyone else described. Tears and laughter, sometimes in the same hour. And then there's the detail that tied the football world's presence into the reception directly, beyond just attendance. The wedding confirmation came after months of speculation, on the heels of the couple donating $26 million to 20 local and national charities, with funds split across children's hospitals, food banks, and music programs in places tied to the pair, including New York, Kansas City, Nashville, and Rhode Island. That donation timed right alongside the ceremony meant the NFL city that made Kelce famous, Kansas City, was getting a direct financial nod on the same weekend. Its commissioner sat in a ballroom listening to a joke about the league. Meanwhile, back on social media, football people who weren't in the room kept adding their own commentary on the spectacle from outside. Kelce's old coach offered a lighter, more personal reflection once the news broke. Andy Reid recalled advice for Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift following their wedding at Madison Square Garden. That's the coach who built Kelce's entire career. Weighing in publicly on the same weekend, guests were still buzzing about what got said inside the venue. Add all of that together, and you get a night where the reactions came from every direction at once. Sportscasters praising the vibe, directors calling it funnier than expected, singers crying through their captions, a head coach offering fatherly advice, and a former Chiefs quarterback publicly sulking about not making the guest list at all. Every one of those voices, whether they knew it or not, was reacting to a wedding where the biggest headline wasn't the dress or the cake. It was a joke about football that Taylor Swift didn't just survive. She signed off on it, called it genius, and let it become the story. That's the part that stuck with people since. Not because Lena Dunham said something risky at a microphone. Comedians say risky things at weddings all the time, but because of who was sitting in that crowd, and because of what Taylor's one-word verdict said about how she sees her husband's world now that she's officially married into it. 2 days after the ceremony, the wedding was still generating headlines, and the fallout from that single moment, Taylor calling her friend's football joke genius in front of a room full of NFL royalty, had only grown louder, not quieter. Part of that is simply because of how public this couple's life has been from the start. The milestone marked a new era for a couple whose romance played out in the public eye, until they threw a wedding shrouded in secrecy thanks to what were said to be ironclad non-disclosure agreements and TSA-level security. That secrecy is exactly why guest accounts became so valuable in the days after. Every detail that leaked, including the football joke and Taylor's reaction to it, carried extra weight precisely because so little else got out. The couple themselves haven't addressed any of it directly. Swift and Kelce haven't shared a honeymoon destination or other post-wedding plans, but Brittany Spanos, a journalist and professor at New York University who teaches a course about the pop star, said she thinks there's probably new music on the way. That's the closest thing to a public comment on what comes next. Speculation about an album, not a statement about a wedding speech. What's clear is that the joke and Taylor's response to it fit a pattern that's followed this couple since day one. From the moment Kelce complained on a podcast about a missed friendship bracelet, through 2 years of stadium cameras and suite appearances, straight through to an engagement caption that joked about an English teacher marrying a gym teacher, this relationship has always used football as both the backdrop and the punchline. The wedding didn't break that pattern, it just put it in front of the one crowd built to feel it the most directly. A room with the league's own commissioner, several of Kelce's actual teammates, and decades of NFL history sitting shoulder to shoulder with pop culture's biggest names. That's also why the reaction split the way guests described it. Gasps and laughs were heard in the crowd because 2 different audiences were hearing the same line. One that had spent careers inside professional football, and one that had spent none. Taylor sat in the middle of that split and picked a side without hesitation. And that's the detail that turned a wedding speech into a story that outlasted the ceremony itself. The unresolved thread, the one still floating out there days later, is simple. Nobody in Kelce's own locker room has said publicly what they made of it. The Chiefs players who were reportedly in the building that night haven't confirmed or denied their own reactions. The commissioner hasn't commented. Kelce hasn't addressed it either, at least not on record. What's left is a room full of witnesses, a handful of leaked details from anonymous guests, and one word from the bride herself that's done more to define the wedding than the dress, the cake, or the 20,000-seat arena it happened in. For a couple whose entire relationship started because a football player got publicly rejected and complained about it on a podcast, it's fitting that the moment everyone remembers from their wedding also involves football. This time with Taylor holding the microphone's verdict instead of Travis holding the bracelet. 3 years ago, he was the one hoping for a reaction from her. On his wedding night in a room built out of both their worlds colliding at once, it was her reaction that ended up defining the story. CNN. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding was the spectacle you expected it to be. NZ Herald. Vulnerable vows and bold jokes at Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding. TMZ. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding. Lena Dunham reportedly made NSFW joke during speech. Marie Claire, Lena Dunham reportedly delivered a raucous speech. NBC News, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce say I do at star-studded bash. Today.com, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding guests are starting to share details. NPR. After weeks of speculation, Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce wed in New York. ESPN. Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce married in ceremony at MSG. Yahoo Entertainment. Taylor Swift sang and Travis Kelce cried during their 20-minute vows. Yardbarker. Travis Kelce's former teammate jokes about missing Taylor Swift's wedding invite. Yardbarker. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's wedding delivers unexpected snub to former Chiefs QB. Marie Claire. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce